Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Today, we'll be discussing the transition from high school to college for first-year students who have disabilities and how to utilize accommodations through the Accessible Education Office, or AEO. My name is Grace Moscola, and I'm the director of the AEO. I lead a team of dedicated professionals who specialize in access-related issues here at Harvard. We're here to ensure that all students have the tools that they need to live, learn, and get involved on campus. I'll now turn it to Varen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Varen. I'm one of the AEO's accessibility advisors. I work directly with students, guiding them through the interactive process of exploring and implementing accommodations.
All right. We'll now be going off camera and begin our slideshow. All right, accommodations and the college transition, what first-year students need to know. I'm going to introduce the AEO staff. On this slide, we have photos of each of our current staff members. These are the professionals you'll be working with, and every student is assigned an accessibility advisor who will be their point person for access issues throughout their time at Harvard. So on the screen from left to right, we have me, Grace Moscola, the director of AEO. Next are our 3 accessibility advisors who conduct access meetings and implement accommodations. They're Varen Parker, Robin Barr, and Glenn Jobless. And then finally, we have Peyton Carter, who is AEO's coordinator and the first person you will likely communicate with in our office as you schedule meetings. We're all here to help. At the bottom, we have our mission, and the mission of AEO is critical to defining the scope and expectations of the work that we do. The Accessible Education Office partners with FAS students, so at the college, GSAS, and Cs, with visible and invisible disabilities to identify barriers and implement plans for access. Through collaboration with the campus community, we foster an environment of equity and inclusion. This mission is very important to us. Moving to the next slide, we share the statistic that approximately 1 out of every 5 Harvard College undergraduates utilize accommodations through the AEO at some point during their college experience. This is important to highlight because disability is not always something that is easily observable. Students who have invisible disabilities, including mental health conditions, learning disabilities, allergies, chronic health conditions, are largely represented in the Harvard College student body. The AEO is one of many resource offices available to you, and we encourage you to connect with us at any time. Moving to the next slide, we talk about disability and the transition from high school to college, which is something many of you may be thinking about right now. I'll be comparing some of the key differences between K-12 and the college experience for utilizing accommodations. Many students enter Harvard having had an IEP or a 504 plan. But in college, accommodations change from an individualized success-based model to one that emphasizes access and equity. The following 4 points illustrate those differences. So on the screen, we have a table with 2 columns, one that says high school and one that says college. So the first section speaks to the guardian involvement. So in high school, guardians advocate for the student, but in college, students advocate for themselves. That's going to be important for you as you make the transition to college. Note that we do work directly with students at the AEO. And if you wish for a parent or a guardian to be present in your initial access meeting, just reach out to your accessibility advisor in advance, and they will share with you when it will be appropriate for them to join the meeting. The second difference that we have noted on the screen is that in high school, the school is responsible for identifying a student's disability and initiating the IEP process or individualized education plan. However, in college, the student is responsible for self-identifying as a person with a disability and reaching out to AEO to discuss access needs. It's the student's responsibility to self-identify their disability and initiate that outreach. Meetings are scheduled once students complete their application and submit documentation, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Scheduling these meetings can take up to 2 weeks depending on availability, so it's important to plan ahead. The third section reads that in high school, the school is responsible for communicating students' needs to teaching staff. However, in college, the student is responsible for sharing their accommodations with faculty. This is done through the AEO portal that we'll talk about later every semester, and students follow up directly with the faculty to discuss what their accommodations will look like in each class. Next, in high school, schools are required to modify the curriculum when there is a disability need. However, in college, no fundamental modifications are required to the curriculum. That may include things like number of pages that are expected for an assignment or the amount of readings done. Instead, AEO works with students to establish reasonable accommodations that do not alter the course requirements, but provide access. Once you register with the AEO, your accessibility advisor will be an important resource to you as you navigate learning to self-advocate and to engage in conversations with faculty around your accommodation needs. Just know that you're not alone in this process. So speaking of self-advocacy, we recognize that students come to Harvard with different experiences navigating independent communication and self-advocacy. It's important that the students initiate outreach to the AEO. And once they do, conversations will be had directly between the student and their accessibility advisor. If parents or guardians were a key part of accommodation planning in the past, it is helpful for students to talk with them in advance of the access meeting to make sure they have a full understanding of what accommodations worked well and were implemented throughout their education. So guardians are no longer involved in the interactive process, as we say in the slide, for determining accommodations, and AEO communicates directly with the students. Your accessibility advisor is your point person who will help you learn how to request and use your accommodations. And we want to establish a positive and open dialogue from the very beginning. I'm now turning the presentation over to Varen, who will talk a little bit more about this process.
So, working with faculty. As you transition from high school to college, this may be the first time you're navigating conversations about access directly with teaching staff. Your accessibility advisor is there to help you. Students who are approved for academic accommodations through AEO are responsible for sharing these accommodations via AIM, our online portal and information management system, at the start of every semester. You will then meet individually with each of your faculty to discuss what your accommodations will look like in the classroom, including flexible and inflexible elements of the course. It is important to remember that, unlike K through 12, accommodations must not alter course requirements. Instead, the focus is on removing or reducing barriers in the environment. Your accessibility advisor will help you prepare for these conversations and support you to advocate for your needs. How to register with AEO. We're on the next slide. There are 3 steps to becoming a registered student with AEO. The first step is to complete our brief application form, which you will find on our website. Look for the register/login button, which is located on the top right of every page. Whether you were diagnosed with a disability many years ago and perhaps had an IEP or 504 plan through school, or if you are at the beginning of your disability journey and do not yet have a diagnosis, I would encourage you to register with AEO if you have or anticipate experiencing barriers in the environment at Harvard. Once you complete an application, we can begin connecting with you and thinking through next steps wherever you are in your disability journey. The second step is to submit relevant, up-to-date documentation that meets our criteria. You will find that information on our website. The process of determining reasonable accommodations is interactive. We emphasize the value of the student's experience, history, and perspective alongside documentation when deciding reasonable accommodations. We ask that students provide documentation from a specialist who can outline the diagnosis and provide a summary of the functional impact along with any recommendations. We recognize that it can be difficult obtaining the relevant documentation, and we don't want this step to be a barrier to applying to AEO. Students struggling to get the appropriate documentation should still apply and include a note in their application explaining the challenges they are experiencing. We can then follow up with a consultation meeting to discuss next steps. The third and final step is to attend an access meeting with an accessibility advisor, which I will discuss in some detail over the next 3 slides. Preparing for your access meeting. So I think, as we've already said, the access meeting is not an interview. It is an opportunity for you to share some of the ways you are impacted by your disability. Prior to your meeting, spend some time thinking about how your disability impacts you in different settings. For example, in the classroom, self-directed study, reading, exams, housing, and dining. This is an opportunity for you to share accommodations that may have worked in the past, or suggest accommodations you think may work at Harvard. It is okay not to know all the potential accommodations you may need. We will make suggestions and work with you based on the experience that you describe. What to expect during the access meeting. So your accessibility advisor will introduce themselves. They will talk through the meeting format and ask you to share how your disability impacts you. As we've already mentioned, just come prepared to share information about your disability, your experience, current or anticipated barriers, educational history, and accommodations that have been effective in providing access in the past. Based on that information, a plan for accommodations may be determined to address inaccessible elements of the college experience. Additional information or meetings might be requested, particularly for more complex needs. Requests for specific accommodations from students and clinicians will be taken into consideration. However, it's worth noting that final determination on reasonable accommodations rests with the AEO. So on this slide, we have some examples of accommodations in college. This is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just to give you an idea of what that might look like somewhere like Harvard. So on this slide, we have a table which is split into 3 columns. In the first column, we have supplementary resources, tools, technology, or auxiliary aids. So these can include text-to-speech software, note-taking technology, and real-time captioning and ASL interpretation. In the second column, we have adjustments to the academic environment. Some examples include extended time on tests, flexibility around deadlines, and accessible seating. And in the final column, we have adjustments to living environment and dining access. Some examples here could include a bed shaker and visual fire alarm in your dorm room, proximity to a restroom, or meals free from allergens. So we've arrived at our final slide. Here is our contact details. So you can call us on 617-496-8707. If we don't answer, please just leave a message, a short, clear message with your name and a phone number where we can reach you, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. I will say the best way probably to get in touch with us is via our email, which is aeo@fas.harvard.edu. And finally, a lot of information can be found on our website. You can go to our website via this link, which is https://aeo.fas.harvard.edu.